Good morning and welcome to Trends in the Papers on 98.3 Mainland FM, the sound of Lagos. Yes, today is Friday, the 15th of September, 2023. And right here at Mainland 98.3 FM, we have so much to be thankful for, so much to celebrate. Today is Jadan's birthday and today is DJ Gabby's birthday. All at once, all at the same time. So we're super grateful and we're wishing them all of the best. We're wishing them greater things to come. We're wishing them greater achievements to come. They are absolutely amazing and we can't wait to party later on. But then let's move on. My name is Omobola Sandra. This is Trends in the Papers. We'll be looking through the major trending stories on the front pages of our dailies. Our papers are here: The Guardian, The Nation, Vanguard, and The Punch newspaper in no particular order. I won't be doing this alone. Fuhad Saheed will be joining in via the phone line to give analysis to all of the stories that we're going to be treating this morning. We'll do this up until 8:30, and then by 8:40, we'll come back again for Mainland. Apologies for that. We'll come back again for Mainland Focus, where we will be looking through two or more major trending stories from the papers, and then we open up the phone line for you to be a part of the conversation. It promises to be an amazing time. All you have to do is stay tuned. Don't forget, we're live on Facebook and YouTube, so you can join the program via any one of those platforms. Drop your comments in the live chat section. Let's have a conversation that sets the agenda for a better Nigeria. That is our policy here. All right, so let's get on with it. But before then, good morning, Fuhad. Oh, I may have to reach you back, Fuhad. I can't hear you, so just stay close by. Would appreciate that. All right. So let's get on with it. Just as we mentioned earlier, we are live on Facebook. You are free to just chip in your thoughts whilst we're having a conversation on trends in the papers. Officially, we open the phone line by 8:40 for Mainland Focus. Then you get to share your thoughts and contribution as regards the conversation we're going to be having this morning. Now, I'll start with the Guardian newspaper, just as we try to reconnect with Said Fuad via the phone line. The major headline there is something that has been exciting a whole lot of us all through the week. Sports stars made in Nigeria on loan to the world. I love how that is coined, and the story is on pages 4 and 5 of the Guardian newspaper. And let's see what the Guardian has to say about this. Fuad?
Yeah, good morning, Sandra.
Oh, it's much better. Yes, good morning. You're welcome. How are you doing? And thank God it's Friday.
Yeah, thank God it's Friday. I'm doing good. How are you doing too?
I'm well. I'm excited.
All right. Let's go.
Let's go. Just as you say, sports stars made in Nigeria on loan to the world. That's the major headline on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. And the report here is saying Nigerians are all over the world doing great exploits across all walks of life. Perhaps no other profession has them aplenty than the world of sports. Stakeholders are unanimous that as long as the best talents cannot find a home in Nigeria, or the motivation to don the white, green jerseys in solidarity to the country of birth, the resource-cursed country will continue to play second fiddle across sports. It should dominate. Fuad, so many times we have had conversation as regards, some sort of, should we say, ignorance or negligence of athletes in this country. I remember the very embarrassing situation from the Olympics where, Nigerian athletes had to be washing their jerseys because they had just won, and there was because they had just won, so they had to, after every activity, they had to wash and then iron dry or whatever it is that they needed to do. So, but then, what do you think of the headline though? Made in Nigeria on loan to the world, and the fact that our talents have not been able to find a home in the country.
Well, I think the Guardian newspaper is just trying to highlight the fact that we have a lot of Nigerians who ordinarily should be athletes of the country, who should be carrying the Nigerian flag, but are now carrying the flag of other nations. One of them, for example, is Bukayo Saka, and there are many of them like that. You look at their name and oh, this is a Nigerian, either by birth and all of that. But again, their exploits are in other countries. Because of our own system. Remember that even the Falcons, at the recently concluded World Cup, FIFA officials had to ensure that their allowance, their bonuses or entitlements were paid directly to them. It was so embarrassing because I remember the female FIFA official in one of our meetings with the Falcons had to say that, look, it's because of you that we are paying everyone directly, not through their FAs. And that highlighted the fact that even FIFA does not trust the system here. The FA is fraught with a lot of corruption. You have bonuses being owed, bonuses being owed footballers. And, if not for, what you can call, just being patriotic, most of these athletes would not honor the call of Nigeria. But, when you listen to them, they talk about the pride that comes with wearing the green, white, green jersey. And that in itself is enough for them, if you understand what I'm saying. And the reality is that, look, if we're looking at the real ambassadors of Nigeria, I think we have to look at our athletes and our sporting personalities all over the world. Either in football, athletics, they are doing well, putting the name of the country where it's supposed to be. The last time I was in Turkey, Sandra, I met one of their locals, in a remote part of Turkey. And when he said, "Oh, you are from which country?" I said, "Nigeria." The first thing he mentioned to me, "Oh, JJ Okocha, now Kanu Wako." He didn't remember any other thing about Nigeria other than our footballers. He said, "Oh, JJ," So, and that's it really. I think in the area of sport, there's a lot that we still need to do. We have the talent here. In football, for example, Sandra, the Principal's Cup of Gold, where young talents are groomed. I don't know whether the Principal's Cup still holds again. How do we get local talent? Oluwatobi Amusan, for example, was able to break the world record in athletics, and everybody was claiming, but if you listen to the young girl, what she said was that, look, a lot of those efforts were personal efforts, were efforts from, the facilities of other nations that she had access to, not local assets, not local facilities that we don't really have. So, sport is one big business that we are not doing enough with, and I think that we should look at that area to engage the youth to, and also make some forex. It's supposed to be a foreign exchange earner for us if we're able to tap into the opportunities in it.
Well, I'm looking at it from the angle of image redemption. Just as you mentioned that you were in Turkey and the person was able to relate Nigeria to world stars who are of Nigerian descent. So if we have our athletes doing some sort of PR for the country that, this is who we are, this is what we do. I mean, say for example, we have Rasheedat Adeleke. I know everybody knows Rasheedat, the blue-haired girl, in the Super
Ajibade.
Falcons. Yes.
That's Ajibade.
That's Ajibade. Yeah. Apologies for that. All right. Well, Rasheedat Adeleke is actually one of our youngest young athletes that is actually working the stage right now. But she is of yes, that's true. Apologies for that connection. But then this particular Rasheedat Adeleke that I'm talking about is Adeleke, yes, is of Irish descent, of Nigerian descent, but Irish born, and she is leading the country of her birth. She was born in Ireland, and she's leading the country of her birth in their ambitions in world athletics. Aside from that, we have Bukayo Saka as well, who also, in one way or the other, he was born in England to Nigerian players. He played for England at senior level, but then even though he's still eligible to represent Nigeria's senior team, he has not played as it is in any competitive game for the Super Eagles. So there are conversations around, and I'm a host of many others actually, and there are conversations around the fact that promoting the country now, is there any way that our federal government can leverage on sports as regards promoting the country, making Nigeria a brand in the sporting world?
Yes, of course. It used to be a brand, Sandra. A lot of us grew up in an era where, we saw our footballers, for example, living up to the golden era. The 1994, so even before the 1994, right from even the days of Segun Odegbami and the rest. So when we now had footballers like Rashidi Yekini, JJ Okocha, Stephen Keshi, we've always been there. We have the talent. We have the talent, but I think the system has not really helped in putting us where we belong. You know, you look at Africa, for example, you see that, for example, look at the Central and East African nations like Kenya, like Ethiopia, and these other nations, Sandra. You know, when it comes to long distance races, we talk about the marathons and all of that. They've been able to hold that down. You know, they have the system, they have the infrastructure, they know how to coordinate their assets to ensure that, look, when it comes to long distance races, you always find a Kenyan or an Ethiopian dominating that part of athletics. You know, football, for example, is one sport that we should be dominating in Africa. But again, like I said, we are not doing enough. There's a lot of corruption in the system. Our local league, for example, if you listen to our sports guys, the Jᴏɪᴜ, you see, out I'm sure they don't have a date when our local league will start. And that's where talents are groomed. When your local league, you know, you keep shifting dates from this date, you know, you can't even coordinate yourself to run a proper local league. So how then you groom talent? How then you begin to discover new talent? And these are the guys that will eventually become ambassadors of the country. You know, but again, the system is not run properly. There's too much corruption in the system. You know, Godwin was in our studio recently, the famous Godwin, and he said a whole lot about the rot in the system. And until we fix those things, nothing will change, Sandra.
Thank you very much, Fuhad. As it is, I have a quote here from former Super Eagles defender Sam Soje saying, "Making Nigeria a brand in sports can attract athletes to the country. This is apart from establishing a good welfare regime for athletes. Nigeria can also put structures in place in collaboration with the private sector. If athletes see that there are good retirement plans in place for them, they will remain in the country. This is what I have studied over the years and planned for. If experienced people are not given the chance to handle the sports sector, poor welfare strategies will keep driving athletes away from Nigeria." There is no magic
Sandra,
about it.
it's
And
also,
that is
it's also
from
about
Sam
facilities.
Soje. That's not from me.
Soje.
Yes, I'm with you.
Sandra, facilities, you know, is also a big problem. Go to the National Stadium in Surulere and see the condition of that stadium. You know, that's a stadium that has hosted some of the biggest competitions, footballing competitions in the world. It has hosted the Nations Cup, the African Nations Cup. It has hosted the Junior World Cup. That same stadium. But look, go check the condition of that stadium. Even the one in Abuja, the one right there, at the corridors of power. The one in Abuja, the MK Abiola Stadium in Abuja, is in a complete state of disrepair. And, you know, if not for the Godswill Akpabio Stadium in Akwa Ibom, you know, where I think the state government is doing, you know, great job managing the stadium. So we can't even provide facilities. The one we provide, we can't maintain them. You know, what's the big deal in maintaining the stadium, Sandra? Or what is the big deal, if not corruption? You have systems. Recently, you know, we reviewed the story of the flood light at the stadium is really falling off, almost killing people, if not for God. So we can't even provide the right facilities. We can't maintain the ones we have. You know, it's unfortunate. When you have smaller nations doing great with managing their facilities and providing good ones for their athletes to thrive, we can't do that.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Fuad Said. The big stories on pages 4 and 5 of the Guardian newspaper, made in Nigeria on loan to the world. Well, I remember during the World Cup last year, there was conversation that I think it was Germany. Germany has like 4 Nigerian descent, as their players. Very interesting thing. Well, I hope, just as we have had a conversation here, let's move on now. Still on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, we have here APC's suppressive rule may stoke serious crisis. PDP's BOT, Board of Trustees, warns. And that story is on page 3. Let's see what they have to say. So the Board of Trustees of the People's Democratic Party has warned that deepening poverty and anger across the country could trigger a major crisis if urgent measures are not taken. And this was at the expressed optimism that the Supreme Court will ultimately and decisively right the wrongs and correct the manifest errors contained in the judgment of the PEPC in the interest of unity, stability, and corporate governance, corporate existence of our country.
The PDP is modeling things up, Sandra. If they want to talk about the conditions of Nigeria at this time, as a result of some of the policies of the government, they should talk about that. Lumping it up with their petition in court does not make any sense. Those are two different issues. If they are talking to the reality of Nigerians at this time, the fact that Nigerians are suffering, there's multi-dimensional poverty, there seems to be some level of suppressive policies that are not making Nigerians try, whether in their businesses or personal lives. They can talk about that as an opposition political party. But that is not hinged. The reality of Nigerians is not hinged on their own petition at the Supreme Court as far as the presidential election is concerned. If you understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because again, we have to be careful to allow the courts to begin to call the kettle black in this instance. Yes, the PDP and Alhaji Atiku Abubakar have said that they will be approaching the Supreme Court, you know, because they are dissatisfied with the judgment of the appeal court. It is within their right. That is the beauty of democracy. That is what we should even encourage. But as an opposition political party, I agree that they can speak to the sufferings of Nigerians at this time, begin to tell the government to become more proactive about, you know, providing good life for the people, bringing the dividends of democracy to the people. Mm-hmm. But now lumping that to the fact that whatever judgment comes out of the Supreme Court will determine how Nigerians will live better. Mm-hmm. For me, I think they're just trying to model things up.
All right.
You know, the Supreme Court would have a say on all of these petitions, and wherever the judgment goes, so be it. We move on with our lives and begin to talk about electoral reforms so that we can have a better electoral process going forward. But as far as the reality of Nigeria is concerned, yes, I agree that Nigerians are suffering and the government needs to do something urgently, you know, so that Nigerians don't get completely frustrated with the government. So, but they shouldn't model the two together. That's what I'm saying.
Well, thank you very much, Saifa. Let's move on to this other story. Still on the front page of The Guardian. It says here that despite $7.5 billion investment, TCN lapses and ROD push grid collapses to 138 in 10 years. So the grid collapsed some 2-3 days ago. Although it has been restored, but then I mean, what exactly before we go into the report, Fuad, in spite of all of the conversations that we keep having as regards this grid collapsing, I remember during the Buhari-led administration, there was the running gag as regards the running humor as regards how many times it collapsed within 8 years. And since the conversation is still there, you know, what exactly is the issue? Is it unsolvable, or is it that, we're waiting for Minister of Power to do something since it's a new administration? What exactly do you think, can you point at as the issue with our grid?
It's just corruption, Sandra. The generation you added the electricity chain, and that has always been the problem now. It keeps collapsing. Although we are not, because if you look at the GenCos, for example, a lot of the generation companies will tell you that they are generating enough. But the problem is that, look, we are not able to sustain transmission to the point that even our distribution guys are not even doing well. But that's weak link. That transmission has always been the weak link, which is the grid itself. You know, the different transmission stations we have in the country. I think recently I saw a video of one of the transmission stations on fire because they talk about vandalism, the fact that, you know, they are also saboteurs within the system. So I think what the government needs to do is to quickly activate the unbundling of the power sector. This thing called national grid, where we have different transmission stations controlled by government, I think should end. So we have a situation where the chain is complete in one structure. You know, we unbundle. You can't begin to tie everything together. I think that's a problem, really, Sandra. When you begin to lump too many things together, you are going to begin to have results like this. Saboteurs will come in. The issue of corruption would come in. And I think that, the president, when he came in, had muted the idea of the complete unbundling of the power sector. I think there are also legislative processes already in place to ensure that it's done. And I think we need to quickly activate that so that, we detach ourselves from this thing called national grid that keeps collapsing. If you know the myth of Abiku, Sandra, when a family keeps giving birth to you know what the end story of Abiku, you're afraid.
It's too early. All right. All right, so what I have in this report is that poor management of the transmission company of Nigeria, especially the national electricity grid, has led to the collapse of the system, bringing the collapse to 138 since the power sector was privatized. So coming barely a few days after TCN rolled out the drums over a misleading celebration of 400 days of no system collapse.
We are even celebrating that. Just imagine. They celebrate.
Maybe they shouldn't have
This child did
celebrated.
not die. You know when you have a child that keeps, fainting. Thank God, 400 days. This child no faint.
You do Thanksgiving.
Let's celebrate.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe the
And now the thing gone collapsing.
The child now said, why are you people doing like this? And then decides to collapse. Anyways, so barely a few days after they rolled out drums over a misleading celebration of 400 days of no system collapse, the grid system, in a double jeopardy, collapsed at 12:40 a.m. on Thursday, only to go down again at 6:40 a.m. That's a 6-hour interval there. So data on grid collapse showed that in 2013, the country recorded 24 power system collapses. So as it is now, a number of discos confirmed that, yes, the grid collapsed, but then discos, gencos are suffering as economy records 3 billion naira losses to nationwide blackout. NERC's contract fails to instill market discipline despite SBT. We also have here, TCN announces grid restoration, blames fire incident for the collapse. And we have no public power supply yet in Abia after restoration, and consumers are lamenting. Well, although, yes, it has been restored, but then what exactly is the way forward? I mean, it's not like... fine, they say people are owing. They say a lot of people are owing the discos. Maybe that's why, so revenue generation has been slow and all of that. But then for the people who are, on prepaid, isn't there any way that, they could be excused from all of these issues or collapses?
Even if you're on prepaid or postpaid, as it were, if there's no power, if there's no power source compared to your, if there's no power supply, it still does not change anything. I think the weak link from what we have as a power structure has been the transmission company, which is still being held by the government. So, but again, people will argue that if you say the transmission company, which is the national grid, is the weak link. What about the distribution companies? They've not performed any better. And if you are to go by the words of former President Muhammadu Buhari, he said that, look, a lot of these guys who eventually became the investors in the power sector had no business at all in that sector. It was more of a political patronage arrangement for them. So they don't even understand what they have. As an investor, if you don't understand the value of what you have, you probably would not even do well with it. And that's why I'm saying that luckily we have legislative framework now to unbundle the entire power sector. And I think that's what we should activate immediately. Let's unbundle these things. Let's, for example, have states generate, transmit, and distribute. We can even have a local government. If they have access to gas or something, you could have, if you want to use hydro, if you want to use solar. So let's unbundle it. You have different sources of power generation. And so we unbundle it, and it has to be a singular structure. Not that this one handles that one. If for example, Lagos wants to have its own power company, it should be a power company that can generate, transmit, and distribute, so that we know who to hold accountable. Now, the distribution company says it's not equal to, the grid has collapsed, so, or the transmission will say, the generation companies are not generating enough. So you have a very confused system, as you see. We should just unbundle that thing. It's not working, just unbundle it.
Well, thank you very much for that. Let's move on now. Still on the front page of The Guardian, but finally, we have here why Abuja and Lagos airports are two most expensive facilities in Africa. So, despite their operational inefficiencies, both Lagos and Abuja international airports were ranked among some of the most expensive airports in Africa. The oddly familiar rating, which was re-echoed by the International Air Transport Association, is not unconnected with perennial multiple taxes and charges that are paid by both passengers and airline operators. The users who had consistently complained about the exploitation said both the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos and the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, would continue to be called out until the authorities review and harmonize sundry users' rate at the facilities. Why are we paying so much? And, there's still so many, backlogs. There's still so many lapses. Yeah, thank you very much. and all of that. Fuad, is this, can we justify all of this that we are paying? Because everything is, written out here. All of what is being paid at different stages at the airport.
Point.
Yes.
Sandra, to make an international travel in any of those two airports, your eye go see shege. You go see shege. You know that you want to make a journey and you're already tired before even boarding the plane. That's the structure we have in our airport. You are already they're frustrated. Apart from the official sundry charges, you are going to have to go through all manner of illegal charges. You are going to have to go through people demanding for tip and bribe and handouts. Everybody sees you like something to tear apart. Everybody's looking for money anywhere from you. And so they create a structure where you are forced to drop something. You want to wrap your bag, you want to check in your bag, you want to use the trolley in the airport, the things are not working properly, you have to pay. So the whole process you before you even board, you go straight. And that's not even good for our image. We are still talking about our athletes now who are supposed to be good ambassadors of the country. But again, one of the first things, a foreigner judges your country by is the way your airport is structured and how the operations are carried out at your airport. And I'm even talking about Nigerians who want to travel out now. You will be standard. You will be frustrated. By the time you get to this point, to the next point, even the way they are talking to you, you see that they are just looking for ways to exploit you, to get something out of you. And those are the reforms that we need to talk about. I can see that Mr. Festus Keyamo, FAN, the Minister of Aviation, seems to have this energy around it. He's talking about a lot of reforms, about new things that need to be done to make some of our airports some of the best in Africa. But I think it's also reform, in the actions of operators. If you say it's the most expensive, one would think that these are legal charges. Some of them are summed up illegal charges to frustrate passengers, just to exploit them.
Well, so many charges are being reported by The Guardian here. I mean, the claim pressure on Nigerian passengers is not out of place, given that there's a system that charges 5% VAT. There's also passenger service charge of 1,000 naira per ticket on local routes. There's charter sales charge, there's aircraft inspection fees, simulator inspection fees, landing charges, parking charges, terminal navigational charge, electricity charges, apron pass, ODC, registration fee, service recovery charge, processing fee. So many of these things. And then the airlines also have to pay. The ones I just read out were their passenger fees now. And then you have airlines paying toll gate fee, VIP lounge, trolley service, clearance fee, check-in counter, export charge, import charge, export royalty, import royalty, so many things. And comparatively, Nigeria charges international air travelers an average of $100 on regional flights, where you have places like some other countries charging higher. But then at the end of the day, we have all of these charges, we are making all of this money, and then you go to the airports for sometimes the ACs are not working. Exactly. The ACs are not working. Some parts of the airport there's no light. The toilets are scary to go into. So
you get into the restroom, you run out sometimes.
Thank you very much. Toilets are very scary to get into. So I'm wondering, so at the end of the day, all of these charges, we're making all of this money. What exactly is now the problem? But then more details of that on page 20 of the Guardian newspaper. You're listening to Trends in the Papers on mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos. We're looking through major trending stories on the front page of dailies. Now, we're on to the Punch newspaper. The major headline there is reading, Nigeria's debt jumps by 75% in 3 months. Fuad, I forgot we're owing money.
We forgot. Sometimes when you are owing, you may not remember. It's possible.
Oh my goodness, look at that. It says how CBN loans to federal government, new debt, promissory notes raise public debt by 37 trillion naira between April and June of this year. Tinubu's reforms will improve debt sustainability. The DMO is assuring Nigerians as latest figure overshoots agency projection by 10 trillion naira. So let's quickly run through what the report has for us this morning. All right. The Debt Management Office has said Nigeria's total public debt hit 87.38 trillion naira at the end of the second quarter of 2023. The figure represents an increase of about 75.9.2%, or 37.53 trillion naira compared to what was recorded at the end of March 2023. And according to the DMO's report, it says that the debt includes the ways and means advances of the Central Bank of Nigeria to the federal government. I remember that was quite a conversation before the expiration of the Muhammad Buhari-led administration. So, as it is now, Nigeria's total public debt stock as at June 30th, 2023, was 87.38 trillion naira, which is about $113.4 billion. And in total, this comprises of domestic and external debts of the federal government, the 36 states, and the FCT. Fuad.
Sandra, we've always talked about our debt situation in the country, even though there are people who tell you now that, it's not still a crisis. Our debt to GDP still allows us to continue to borrow. It gives us a window to borrow more. That our debt to GDP is still around 34-35%. So it's not as ridiculous as the debt to GDP of countries like the United States, which is over 100%, blah, 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 and all of that. But again, when you look at your debt to GDP, you have to also look at debt to revenue ratio. That's number one. You also have to look at debt to corruption index, because again, we have this humongous debt hanging on our neck as a nation, both foreign, domestic, federal, and state level. But you ask yourself, what do we have to show for it? That's the big question, really. Yes, I agree that borrowing is not a problem. Everybody borrows. America is owing, China is owing, everybody borrows. But the question is, what exactly do you do with what you are borrowing? What is the result of this humongous debt? We are still talking about insecurity. We are still talking about infrastructure deficits. Our hospitals are still in terrible shape across the country. Our schools are still not well equipped. So, and I like the fact that the president is already talking about the fact that, look, this debt situation is not sustainable. A situation where we are using almost about 90% of our revenue to service debt. It's not sustainable. But there are two issues to this debt situation. The government is looking at solving our debt problem by looking at revenue generation. And in doing that, they are stifling the people. They are stifling businesses, taking from the people, because they think that borrowing is not sustainable. But there are people who are also saying that, look, is it about revenue or about the way we spend it? You are one of those advocates of us looking at the two issues now. We make all of this money and then we begin to deploy money in a very reckless manner, where our legislators are getting humongous allowances, unnecessary allowances. Our budgetary provisions, for example, for the executive is still so humongous. You make international travel and you pack everybody that is needed or not needed, and then you pay extra code, you pay allowances. So I think the cost of governance is also something we are not paying enough attention to. So we need to look at that too. We need to substantially reduce the cost of governance. And then the other one, Sandra, which is also very important, is corruption. We have to be intentional about the fight against corruption. If we still have corruption the way it is in the country, Sandra, we make the monies by telling people to tighten their belts. The government goes after tax evaders. Subsidies removed. People have to buy fuel at almost 700 naira per liter, blah, blah, blah. Government makes all of the money. Then corruption sits in one corner and swallows everything. And the people still remain poor. They still go to hospital, no facilities. They use the roads, they are still bad. Nothing changes in their life. And then what do you now say? So it's a very big problem, and I think it is still the job of the government to fix it. We need to look at corruption, the cost of governance, and then begin to be more prudent about how we deploy money, how we spend money. I think we're just too reckless. And that also ties into the corruption index in the country.
Well, do you agree with Professor Sherifdeen Teller of OOU saying that the floating of the naira is the major factor that has caused a significant increase in Nigeria's total debt?
The thing is that a lot of our external debts are dollarized. You have to pay in dollars. So now that we floated, the dollars, the forex, the way we've done it, automatically, for example, you are owing maybe $100 million before. Now that your currency is misbehaving, automatically it's going to jump up. So, even the funds that we're not going to repatriate to the foreign airlines, we'll have because of our foreign situation. You don't understand what I'm saying? Because what it now means is that, look, a lot of your external debts are in dollars. And as forex is going up, your debt is going up automatically because you have to now value it using that same rate. So it's also part of the problem. It increases our external debt because you have to pay in dollars. It's in dollars, and your currency is behaving badly. So your debt ratio goes up automatically from 77 trillion now to about something trillion. Forex is part of the problem.
Well, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu recently expressed his administration's commitment to break the cycle of over-reliance on borrowing for public spending and the resultant burden of debt servicing. Which birthed the inauguration of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, chaired by Taiwo Oyedele, and the president has charged the committee to improve the country's revenue profile and business environment. However, Fuad, just very quickly, the DMO is stating that for us to be able to survive this debt issue, the government should pay, that we have gotten ourselves into. The government should pay attention, or must pay attention, to revenue generation by implementing far-reaching revenue mobilization initiatives and reforms, which includes strategic revenue growth initiatives and all its pillars. And to reduce borrowing and budget deficit, the DMO is stating that the government should encourage the private sector to fund some of the capital projects that are being financed from borrowing through public-private partnership schemes. They also said that the federal government can also reduce borrowing through privatization and or sale of government assets. Do you agree with some of these suggestions or advice?
Sandra, I agree that government needs to make more money. Revenue generation has been, advised by the DMO, the Debt Management Office. But there's one thing that we, especially, agencies of government, institutions of government fail to mention and make a priority. And you've always asked that question: is it a revenue or expenditure problem? Yes, we can expand the tax net, privatize a lot of things, get the private sector to fund a lot of capital projects. The sale of national assets is my own worry because we have an experience with that. All of the national assets we sold in the past, what happened? A lot of them were undervalued and sold to political cronies of our politicians, if you understand what I'm saying. So I have a bit of reservation about sales of national assets because at the end of the day, it would end up in the hands of some of these political jobbers who are cronies and associates of our politicians. But even if we make all of the money, we do all of these recommendations from the DMO, what about our spending pattern? How do we spend this money? And in talking about that, I'm looking at our corruption index, it will swallow, you can make, have we not been making money, Sandra? Do you think even we have not been making money? It's not as if we have not been making money. A lot of the state governors have put their states in debt, serious debt. But you go to those states, nothing is happening. They can't pay salaries, there are no good rules, you understand what I'm saying? So it's not as if we have not been making money. Even with the money we are making, the borrowing, what have we done with it? And that's why I'm saying that, look, as we are recommending aggressive revenue drive, can we also recommend, a more prudent expenditure pattern and a serious fight against corruption? It has to all go together, or else it's still going to be the same story.
Well, thank you very much. I guess we are back to the revenue challenges conversation. Revenue challenges or expenditure challenges, we'll see. For more details, you can get it on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Let's keep moving now. Still on the front page of still on the front page of the Punch newspaper, we have here zero allocation. Ogun local government chairman impeached. Lampoon's Abiodun. And that story is on page 8 of the Punch newspaper. And so let's just quickly look through that story and then we'll move on. We have here the councillors of the Ijebu East local government of Ogun State on Thursday impeached the suspended chairman of the local government, Wale Adedayo, over allegations of financial misappropriation and diversion of council funds among other allegations made against him. And this was according to a statement by the leader of the Legislative Council of the local government area, Jᴏɪᴜ Aᴊɪṕᴏ. Fuad, do you remember all the local government chairman that
Sandra,
called out? Okay.
Well, I'm working very hard to get Mr. Adedayo on political roundtable this Sunday. We've gotten his mobile number. Incidentally, he's a man that we know very well. We're former schoolmates. And so we're working to see him have an appearance of political roundtable on Sunday. I'm hoping that he's not too disturbed or disoriented to be able to make that appearance. But there's nothing new. We knew this was going to come. You know, when you have emperors who pretend to be political leaders or advocates of democracy, this is what you get. Up till now, Governor Dapo Abiodun of Ogun State has not explained or reacted properly to the petition against him by this chairman. What did the chairman say? In the last 2 years, blah, 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 funds that are supposed to come to my local government have not been coming. You know, this has happened, that has happened, and all of that. And one would have expected that, look, what the governor should have done, instead of the bravado, you know, the idea of getting some other local government chairman to come and prostrate for you in your office as if you are a king, you know, or sending the DSS, you know, after the man to arrest him and harass him. And now eventually you have councillors in that same local government impeaching the guy on trumped-up useless charges of corruption and misappropriation of funds. Mr. Dapo Abiodun, the governor of Ogun State, should have just done a 2-page publication in any of the daily newspapers of how much he has deployed to that local government in 2 years. That would have resolved all of the issue. With statements of account that look, from these 2 years in the joint state and local government account, this is how much has gone to that local government. It is a very simple thing. Up till now, he has not done that. You know, some of these governors need to be very. And that's the question around. I remember when the governor was going to become governor, you know, and he was shouting the fact that he was being harassed by Mr. Jᴏɪᴜ Aᴊɪṕᴏ, the former governor, blah, 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 and they don't want him to become governor because that one wants to be a godfather. How is it different now from the people he was accusing when he was going to become governor? Is there anything different now? Come on, they don't know. The guy is a radical human being. Because eventually, the Adedayo was now, I don't know the guy when we were in school. Oh, okay, that guy. Sandra, we have not heard the last of that matter. If it is the Wale Adedayo I knew in school, we have not heard of the last. Now that he has been impeached, more kind of ones will be open. Like I said, we are working to see whether we can drag him into the studio on Sunday to come and at least have a say on what is happening in that state.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I think I should be able to. We should be able to do that. Well, let's.
I'll try.
That's not much of an issue. More details on page 8 of the Punch newspaper. Let's move on now. Still on the front page of the Punch, we have here: Tinubu orders Nami's retirement, appoints Adedeji FIRS chairman, and that story is on page 18 of the Punch newspaper. So just very quickly, what we have on the story or on that particular report is the president has approved the appointment of Zaccheaus Adedeji as the new acting executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. And this announcement coincides with the impending commencement of terminal leave for the former chairman, Mohammed Nami. And as it is now, the president has instructed the former FIRS chairman, Mr. Mohammed Nami, who had been in office since December 2019, to promptly begin a 3-month pre-retirement leave as stipulated by Public Service Rule 12243. This leave will ultimately result in his retirement from service on December 8, 2023, which will then have Zaccheaus Adedeji in acting capacity for that 90-day period before his subsequent confirmation as the substantive executive chairman of FIRS.
I don't think there's anything more to talk about here. These are personnel reforms that we're going to see. We're going to see more people taking up positions, a new government, so some of these things will naturally happen. So I don't see any major thing from this, other than the fact that, the leadership of the FIRS is changing. So that's it.
Well, more details on page 18 of the Punch newspaper. This is still trends in the papers on mainland 98.3 FM. Let's quickly run through the Nation newspaper while we're at it. The major headline on the front page of the Nation: DHQ police turn hit on oil thieves and economic saboteurs. And the writers there says 1 million liters of stolen crude seized in 1 week. IG orders clamp down on firearms production. So pressure has piled on oil thieves and economic saboteurs and bandits by the military and the police. And these have started to yield some sort of results, as the nation's security has raised the tempo of their battle against those that they have described as enemies of the government's plan to improve the economy. Fuad, what would be your own assessment of our fight against oil thieves?
Until we see people being arrested, people being prosecuted, I will just assume that this is just statements to make headlines. Yes, we should go after these oil thieves, their economic saboteurs. If we're able to resolve oil theft in the country to help our revenue drive, if we help our forex revenue generation drive. So it's one thing that we need to do. But I'm used to statements like this from our security operatives. When they come in to make a joint statement, they get us unnecessarily excited about those statements, and nothing happens. We still keep reporting oil theft with so much brazenness and impunity. So until we see that, people are being arrested, vessels are being arrested, and not just being arrested, we have situations where people are taken to court and prosecuted and probably even convicted. The fight against oil thieves for me would still be a big joke, because you have situations where locals of these different oil-producing communities talk about the complex nature of oil stealing, oil theft in the country. Some of them even indict our security officials. They indict naval officers, they indict military officers as being part of the cartel. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not just for our security operatives to come and make these joint statements and get us unnecessarily excited. Let us see them going after these oil thieves, getting them arrested and prosecuting them. And we now know that, yes, we are serious about the fight against oil theft in the Niger Delta. We have to wait to see that happen, really. I'm not excited.
All right, then the story is on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. And then we also have, still on the front page of the Nation, we won't allow one-party rule, says PDP. And that story is on page 6. That's very, very ironic. But
they should put their house in order. If they don't want one-party rule, they should be selfless within their party. They should put their house in order. They should put the interest of the nation first. It's good that they are talking about not making us have a one-party situation in the country. But the PDP has been so disappointing as an opposition party. But let's know what the story is about. I'm not excited about how they've done so far.
That's all right. Well, the PDP has said they have resolved to resist what they call the current manifest desperation by the ruling APC to turn Nigeria into a one-party state. And the elders of the PDP expressed confidence that their presidential candidate would appeal against the ruling PPC's verdict at the Supreme Court. So it's just a continuation of the...
They are modeling things up, Sandra. I say they are just modeling things up. Okay, let us say they get to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court affirms the ruling of the appeal court. Are they saying that the only way they can fight a one-party system is to be in power? What we are saying is that even as an opposition figure, can you get yourself more coordinated to ensure that you put the ruling party on their toes? That's what we are saying. They talk about, initially they were talking about the suffering of Nigerians. Now they are talking about one-party thing. And they keep lumping everything to the Supreme Court. I don't understand what that is supposed to mean. What we are saying is that even if you are not in power, let us say eventually Atiku does not even win that case at the Supreme Court, there can still be a very vibrant opposition political party in Nigeria to ensure Nigerians get the dividends of democracy and put the ruling party on their toes. In the late stage, Ʀᴏᴜᴜ was an opposition leader, and he did fantastically well, even without being in power. That's what we are saying.
Well, we wish them all the best then. It's the BOT of the PDP that is, speaking at this time now. But that's all we can take for this morning on trends in the papers. We'll take a short break now, and then we will be back by 8:40 for Mainland Focus, where you, our dear listener, get to be a part of the conversation. So please stay tuned.